Hello everyone, and welcome back to Kindness Wins Games. We're playing Cities Skylines, and we are in the city of peach trees. We're starting things off by dezoning almost everything in the first industrial district. And this area is going to go through a transition from industry, general industry, to residential and commercial zones. We won't make that transition until after we give the land some time to rehabilitate, though. And I'm thinking that, we can see we have a lot of abandoned farms over here and a need for workers. So my thinking is that the lack of jobs here over by the beach will kind of send workers across the highway. And here I'm starting to think more about roads. We need an alternate route for all of the truck traffic that is trying to access the biochar company in the south. And I'm thinking that we build a highway through the mountains. Here, I take a few minutes to think about the bigger picture, considering everything from traffic flow to what the zoning might look like, and even considering if I need to make additional demolitions. I kind of decide that we're okay with this layout as is, and then I'll build out around it. For anyone who might be less familiar with city skylines, the way that these industry areas work is there are three types of buildings. And I know I covered this in a previous video, but I'm assuming that people might be jumping around a little. So there are extractor buildings, processing buildings, and storage buildings. And the extractor buildings essentially pull from the land. So you need to have fertile land available if you're doing a farm. Likewise here, you see me outlining a roadway for a lumber industry. So you can see all of these trees here in the green ground indicating that that's sort of prime lumber land. So the extractors need that asset. And then the processing buildings take those assets and turn them into stuff. And then there's also unique factories, which kind of combine both of those things and then produce stuff that can be sold in your commercial zones. So like here, we're putting down a flour mill. We just put down a couple of more fields. These fields are extractors. The flour mill is a processing building. And these skins do not impact the production. As far as the game is concerned, these extractor buildings in the farm produce crops, no matter what is selected for the look. And then there are some other auxiliary buildings, like some of the ones that I just placed down where like a workers' barracks that kind of improves the efficiency of the area, which I think is very cool. I decided to activate improved logistics, which increases the storage capacity of extractors and processing buildings by 20%, and it increases upkeep cost by the industry buildings by 10%. I also activate improved work safety supervision, so this increases workers' health at a cost of $1 per affected worker. And you can see here, at the moment, our farm is not making profit, but that is about to change. There we go. Now we're in a positive. We're making $600 in this rotation here. And you can see our production is pretty good. 132 tons of crops. And that will continue to improve as we build out more. So this flour mill requires crops in order to operate. So this is, just wanted to make sure that it was getting what it needed in order to turn on. You can see as we kind of sweep over the first industrial district, the land has already begun to rehabilitate and it's losing some of that purple pollution. And now it's time to turn our attention to the main boulevard that's going to run through this part of the city. At first, my intention is to largely keep things organized or laid out in the way that they were already. But I decide that in order to make this part of the city, make the traffic in this part of the city flow better, I'm going to go ahead and demolish quite a lot and rebuild from scratch. And this just feels much better to me, especially after this last change here. Now we have a main sort of inner city highway, or intra-city highway, I should say, that's running. It's the 6-lane boulevard where, it can kind of function as like a main street. And we're going to have all kinds of connections. We're going to have plenty of street connections, but also lots of pedestrian connections as well. And we want this to feel like a city. We want Peachtree's to feel like a very inviting city to walk and to ride a bike. We acknowledge the need for plenty of vehicular accessibility, but we really do want it to feel more like a walking community. I realized that I had called this Riverside Farmers Market, so there's a correction, Beachside Farmers Market. Just checking in on all of our water pipes, I noticed that we have some redundant pipes there. Not redundant, but unneeded. It looks like our water availability and sewage is all right, although our sewage treatment will be a problem kind of soon, so we need to keep our eye on that. I'm thinking this area here will be a separate district, and at this point, we are going to go ahead and rename First Industrial District to Old Industrial District. And setting policies in districts is one of my favorite mechanics in the game. So I always like to take a moment to consider, what do I want this district to be like? What kind of person would want to live here, and why? What would make it so that they feel excited about moving into old industrial district? So I do decide any commercial in this area is going to be organic and local produce, and all of our residential homes are going to be self-sufficient in this area. So this is a radical change from the general industry that was fairly heavily polluting. All right, now here we're going to establish our alternate route for trucks to make it over to our new forestry industry and also the biochar company. And you can see, for the most part here, what I'm trying to do is follow the contours. But I'm noticing as I'm kind of making my way back here that this slope is pretty ridiculous. So we are going to need to do something about this. But over here on this side of the mountain, that looked pretty good. So we're going to go ahead and use some of our topographic tools to kind of carve out an area here for our highway to run. And as I watch this playback, I realized that, we're about to create an angle here right there that is very severe. So we may go back and fix that next episode. But otherwise, I think this looks pretty good. Now we're going to upgrade it to a highway and then encourage our truck traffic to take this route and avoid driving through the main boulevard. See here that all of our farms in this area are now operational. So our workers have kind of migrated over, or at least, they drive over here to work in this area now that we removed the general industry. And in an effort to provide additional jobs, we are zoning some more farming over on that area and expanding the biochar company even more. These large barns can store a tremendous amount of crops, so that should help kind of regulate some of the flow of goods here over time. Designing industry zones is one of my favorite things to do in this game. I think it's really rewarding to create an area that functions effectively, where you don't have any traffic backup and you're making a profit, but is also beautiful. And in some ways, I really lean into the fact that this is a game, and making things maybe more symmetrical than they would be, in real life. But I think that's all right. You can see our profit has grown. We're now up to $11.26 per cycle. As our farm area grows, I know that we need additional access points, so I'm starting to kind of set that up for us. So we've connected the highway, yet we still see lots of trucks driving through the city. So what we decided to do here is go to the policies of Old Industrial District and select Old Town, which makes it so that only residents and businesses can use those roadways, meaning that our trucks for the biochar company are no longer allowed to drive through that area. So we provide an additional highway road there. So things are starting to smooth out here. And we want to just check in on our happiness, because if our happiness falls below 85%, we lose this scenario. So we're at 90 right now, and we should stay fairly high, especially with all of our parks in the area. But I'm starting to feel a little nervous about how long we have a almost maxed out industry meter. And here we can see that although our traffic flow overall is good, there is that pivot point that is still bright red. So we're going to see if we can do something about that. And I realize I called that a pivot point. I just meant intersection. We can see that animal pasture does not have enough raw materials, and that toward the bottom of the screen here we see one of our fruit fields, or one of our orchards, doesn't have a buyer. So a lot of these problems that we're seeing, I think, are a result of traffic not being able to get here. So I kind of power through that and continue expanding the biochar company. So at this point, we're just trying to optimize some of our connections to the biochar company and checking in other parts of the city. You can see we placed down this firehouse in a spot where it actually isn't connected to the road because of a little bridge that's there. No problem, we'll just move it over here. I actually kind of like the way this bridge looks. I don't know how realistic it is, but it's pretty cool in my mind. Look at all of those trucks. So now you can see that our main boulevard here is almost empty. Now, granted, we also have an empty district that's going to fill in next episode, but still all of our trucks are using our new highway, and that is a pretty big win. Thanks everyone for joining me, and I will see you next time for episode 8 of Peach Trees.